Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to A Cup of Hope with Hope Against Trafficking and the Michigan Abolitionist Project. Today's episode is focused on substance use addiction, PTSD, and recovery amongst sex trade survivors. Thank you so much for being with us today as we talk with local experts and unpack the reality of substance abuse, addiction, PTSD, and other mental health concerns amongst survivors of the sex trade. What does recovery truly look like for survivors? During this live stream, we will explore key factors that make someone more susceptible to entering the life, barriers that keep them from leaving, as well as the strategies and services needed for survivors to successfully exit the sex trade. We have a couple of guest speakers today joining us. Allison Mercer with Common Ground. Allison is an experienced victim advocate with a demonstrated history of working with human trafficking, child abuse, neglect, sexual assault, and foster care. She has experience working in the field of trauma while communicating and being a liaison with various different agencies, including all levels of law enforcement, MDHHS, courts, and nonprofits. She has a Bachelor of Arts degree in criminal justice and sociology from Oakland University. She's a graduate of Michigan State University with a Master's of Science in Law Enforcement Intelligence and Analysis. Allison is currently working on the following initiatives to assist human trafficking survivors in the community. Survivor to Thriver initiative with the Oakland County Human Trafficking Task Force within the Michigan Ops team investigating violent exploitation motive in collaboration with the Madison Heights Special Investigation Unit. And she's coordinating with the Salvation Army Eastern District of Michigan for direct funding assistance for survivors. And we also have Brigette Henderson. She's a lived experience expert and a survivor leader. She's a strong and courageous survivor of human trafficking. Brigette has dedicated her life to acting as a supporter and advocate for those who have experienced exploitation, violence, and human trafficking. Determined to channel her life experiences into something constructive, Brigette was conferred a bachelor's in social work from Eastern Michigan University. Today, she uses her real-world knowledge and her formal education to reach out to those who've been traumatized by human trafficking and/or exploitation. A highly sought-after subject matter expert, Brigette is credited with the development of multiple human trafficking trainings and presentations, including collaborations with Child Protective Services, the Human Trafficking Awareness Tour with Senator Judy Emmons, Henry Ford Hospital Human Trafficking, and the Michigan State Housing Development Authority Summit on Ending Homelessness. In 2020, Brigette was honored to receive the Rising Phoenix Award presented by the Intentional Living Collective in recognition of her work as an advocate for those who've experienced exploitation and human trafficking. Brigette also sits on multiple boards, including the Michigan Heat Coalition and the Michigan Human Trafficking Health Advisory Board and Governor's Office. So welcome everyone. We're just so excited to be here. You all will have the opportunity to submit questions to our panel by typing your questions into the Facebook Live event on either Hope Against Trafficking or the Michigan Abolitionist Facebook page, or through Hope Against Trafficking's YouTube page. You may send in your questions at any time during the presentation. We will collect these and address them during the session. To welcome today's panelists again, we have Emily Johnson with the Michigan Abolitionist Project. We have Allison Mercer with Common Ground, and Brigette Henderson, our expert survivor leader. And I, again, am Hannah McPeak with Hope Against Trafficking. So I am so excited that we get to be here again together. We're just going to have a cup of coffee and talk about substance addiction, PTSD, and recovery amongst sex trade survivors.
Very excited to have you both with us. Thank you for joining. To kick things off, do we want to start? Maybe you both could explain a little bit more about the role and the work you do. Who Who wants to start with that? Just get into more of your job, your role, what you do.
I'll jump in, I guess. Currently, I'm a human trafficking advocate. I work for Common Ground. I normally we're case managers, and people always ask me, what do you actually do? And if they say social work, I pretty much say, yeah, that. We essentially start with people from, whenever we first meet with them, which could be, through law enforcement, hospitals, maybe they call our crisis line, whatever it could be. And we stick with them as long as they want us to. And what we help them with is unique based on each person. So whatever their goals are is what we try and help them achieve. And we kind of help navigate the systems because getting help is not easy. And so we try and help navigate, the government, the criminal justice system, benefits, health insurance, all the type of stuff that no one really teaches you how to do. And then you get flustered trying to figure out, doing all these things. So we're kind of there to be like the right-hand person to help them figure out what they want to do and achieve those goals, and then work with other resources to make sure they feel independent enough once they're ready to be done with our services, that they're ready to take on whatever else they want to do with their life on their own.
Awesome. Allie, do you only serve survivors of human trafficking or all just victims of crime? Or
So Common Ground has a victim assistance program that serves all victimizations. Our trafficking program is a part of that, but separate. So now our grants got split again. And so I can only work with human trafficking. But if I have a trafficking survivor that, is currently involved in DV or is a victim of assault, I can still work with them because they've had trafficking in their past. But we are more strict on that now that the grants from the government got split up again.
Okay. Good to know. Brigette. Hey, Brigette. Why don't you tell us a little bit about all the amazing stuff that you do?
Oh, it's so much. No, I'm Brigette Henderson, and I am a lived experience expert on commercial sexual exploitation. And I'm also a survivor leader for the state of Michigan on combating trafficking here in our state, as well as across the country. So I do presentations wherever, whenever, and however. And I'm a boots on the ground advocate. I'm a resource queen for survivors of human trafficking, and I help them navigate the complex cycles of our systems to help them regain their lives and their recovery from their experiences. And I'm currently in the process of getting ready to launch Brigette Henderson and Associates, which is a platform for survivors to be able to speak and present when they are ready. Because we're trying to avoid the re-exploitation of survivors for their stories. So I will be launching that soon, and I'll be sending everybody an email once I do.
That's awesome. I have referrals for you.
Ooh, I'll take them. And I do work 365, 24/7. So I'm one of the leading advocates for survivors. So that's just what I do. And my why is why not?
I love the simplicity of that,
Brigette is my go-to gal for lots of stuff. Very grateful for the work that both of you do. Man, you're talking about case management. I feel like everybody could use a case manager to navigate healthcare and all the stuff of the world, our credit cards, and just, yeah. So the fact that survivors need a case manager is so obvious. Like, I wish I could have a case manager. So but that's definitely a big help to survivors. So to kick off our convo, well, I guess that was our kickoff. So first question of the first real question, let's get into our discussion. So I know we've all talked about this before. Anyone who has had any kind of human trafficking training or education, we often talk about those push factors or risk factors that may lead someone to entering the life. And today we're talking about the commercial sex industry. So this could be prostitution, strip clubs, pornography, sex trafficking. So whether by choice or by force, fraud, and coercion? What are some of the reasons that people are entering or are kind of pushed or forced into the sex trade? What kind of things make someone vulnerable to that life?
I can start on that one. I think in a simple way first is there's not options. I think a lot of people don't understand. They just think, oh, go do something else. Oh, well, why didn't they decide this? Well, how many are actually viable options, especially if you don't know how to go seek out those options or to even move forward with them. But big ones often, and I always say, like with vulnerabilities too, you don't have to have any of these to become a victim of trafficking either. But poverty, homelessness, if you're a part of the LGBTQ plus population, if you have prior victimizations, trauma from the past, previous substance use or mental health, all those things, can be exploited by traffickers that cause you to be vulnerable. The internet makes you vulnerable depending on how much you share on the internet about yourself. Really, anything could really be used as a vulnerability. It just depends on, how is it shared, who finds out about it. And that's the thing. Anyone can be vulnerable to this type of stuff. But I think a lot of people think, well, that's someone else's problem, or that would never happen to me. Or it's really easy to push it off to the side and think, well, that's not my problem type thing. But this could be anyone. I mean, it doesn't matter what community you grew up in, doesn't matter boy, girl, male, female, what gender you identify with, anyone can become a victim of it. So that's my first thing I'll say.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'll go ahead and chime in on that too. I call it systemic oppression. Because the way the systems are built, it makes it very hard for people, especially if they've never experienced the systems, to get assistance for themselves. And the systems aren't built the way they need to be built to actually help people move forward and thrive. And I've worked with people where they were trafficked because of grief. They lost somebody and somebody exploited their grief, and it led from one thing to another. There's just so many different ways of becoming vulnerable. Mental health issues, substance issues, you don't have proper housing, or the community that you're growing up in. It's if there's money to be made, it's going to get made.
And we all know how society plays a role in that too, with teaching young girls that this is, an okay, that there is a lot of money to be made, and that, that they're kind of normalized at that point with all like the music and the movies we see, like, the rise of OnlyFans. Like when COVID hit, everybody was making OnlyFans accounts, like, oh, I'll just sell pictures of my feet and make a couple bucks real quick. So society definitely doesn't make it any easier by the normalization that the sex industry is safe, that there's a lot of money to be made. Awesome. Thank you for those answers, ladies. Definitely. So, so Allie, you kind of touched on this. So traffickers, then how do they, what is their response to those vulnerabilities, or how are people's vulnerabilities then, I guess, do you want to expand on just the role of a trafficker then when vulnerabilities are presented, how they can then be exploited? Or either of you can answer that question, really. Did I just answer your own question?
I'll start again and Brigette will expand. So really they try and fill what that vulnerability is. They try and, say, oh, well, I can put a stable roof over your head, or, oh, I can provide food for you. Oh, I can get drugs for you if you have an addiction, which I know we're talking, this one's a little bit about PTSD, but there is so much misunderstanding in the world about addiction and substance use that people need a lot of education on. That's not enough for this presentation we're doing right now. But I mean, saying you can fill that void. And for some people that can be, actually feeling like they're cared for. saying, oh, well, you've never been able to buy new clothes. You've just always gotten hand-me-downs. Well, I can buy you new clothes. And some people think, that might sound so small, but it could start that way. It could start small and then it could change. Now, that's not everyone's trafficking experience or story, but they use that vulnerability against them. They found out something about you, or they know what your weakness could be, and then they use it against you. In some cases, not all of them.
I agree, Ellie.
Right.
Stamp of approval. Okay, great. So, Brigette, can you tell us more about the links between substance abuse, addiction, and the commercial sex industry? What are, how prevalent is the use of substances? How often is it that people with pre-existing addictions are lured into the life, and how often are drugs used as, I don't want to get too much, but
substances are used as a control mechanism and also as a coping mechanism. In the beginning, somebody could not be addicted, and then they're trusting into their trafficker, or they're just out there, and trauma and numerous amounts of trauma, it becomes a coping mechanism for the person to deal with their situation. Traffickers use it as a controlling tool to make sure that that person's coming back to them, because that person's going to get sick, that person's going to go through withdrawals. So I know you're coming back to me when you're going to get sick, and you need to make sure that you have the money that I told you to bring back before I'll even give you your fix. So in strip clubs, strippers drink, they snort coke, they do everything to numb themselves out in order to do what they're doing.
Thanks, Brigette. So how does that affect one's ability to provide consent if they're constantly numbing out the pain, or just their experience on a day-to-day basis? How does the influence of drugs affect one's ability to consensually engage in what they're doing?
I look at it like this. If law enforcement cannot interview or interrogate somebody that is under the influence of substances, because later on it could be argued that they weren't acting rationally, they weren't answering questions rationally, it could be thrown out in a court of law. So if they're not able to ask these questions of somebody under the use of substances, why aren't we looking at it as the same way for victims of human trafficking?
That makes a lot of sense, Brigette. That's a very good point. So let's unpack this, just more of the, what is the prevalency? So someone had mentioned, we wanted to talk about PTSD today and just mental health in general. What is the prevalency of all of that? Like PTSD, isn't that like something that only war veterans experience? Like, what are you guys talking about when you say that survivors of sex trafficking have experienced PTSD, or what are some of these other co-occurring mental health disorders that may have been pre-existing or may have been the result of their participation in the sex trade? Who wants to expand on that?
I think you said a good point right there too. Was it occurring before the trafficking, or is it a reason coming out of it? And I think it can absolutely be both. You get people that have had mental health issues, and then they're more severe, maybe because they aren't on medication. That's a controlling mechanism right there. They can be vulnerable when they already have mental health, but I would say every victim survivor I've ever worked with has had some sort of mental health, and that is normal. I think a lot of the times, they might not even realize, their triggers or what is causing them anxiety could be because of their PTSD. And so working with them, finding a mental health professional that is understanding of what they've been through is already extremely difficult, let alone going through, most of them have Medicaid, which we've talked about, finding professionals that know what they're talking about versus having survivors try and teach someone what they've been through at the same time. But mental health is always a big thing, whether, PTSD is really common, anxiety, depression, a big thing too, I've seen is paranoia, but there's a difference between being diagnosed with it versus it's normal because of what you've been through, and a lot of people have a very big misunderstanding of, oh, well, they think, someone's following them and you think, oh, they're just being paranoid. Well, maybe they've been followed in the past, maybe they're being tracked on their social media because they used to post where they were at. So it's just a big misunderstanding. I think, we look through people on one side of a lens, and then we don't even give them the time to share why they might be feeling that way or what's going on. But mental health is huge. For substance use and addiction, I couldn't give a percentage, but of the people I've worked with, I'd say like 90% have had some sort of substance use or addiction, whether it was already happening before, or I have had cases where, they were introduced to substances or forced to take them. Those are really common too, but PTSD most of the time, though I can't diagnose people, most of the time it's normal when I work with someone and they're showing signs of PTSD, or I think it's something, that if they want to go get checked out for it, we could do, because it helps them understand what they've gone through and how they're feeling. They might just think, so I've had survivors tell me, well, no, I'm just crazy. And I'm like, you're not crazy. I'm like, look at what you've been through. These are your triggers. Like, helping them break down, understanding why they're feeling that way can be very helpful, instead of you just assuming, oh, well, they need this and they need that, and they're making that up. Well, take time and sit down with someone and really try and understand, why do they think that way? What have they been through? What experiences have caused them, to think that way? So all of those things are very common.
That's a great answer, Allie.
My experience with PTSD, there's not enough awareness around PTSD. When you say PTSD, people automatically assume, oh, you're a veteran of war. And me personally, I'm like, yeah, of my own war.
Yeah.
But there's not enough awareness. And then we have to look back at our systems and, getting health insurance for survivors. It's next to impossible. And then if they do get health insurance, like Medicaid or something in our state, they're pushed through these community mental health facilities for their treatment. But a lot of these therapists are not trained to handle PTSD or complex PTSD. My own personal experience, I went through 15 therapists before I finally found the one that actually worked for me. The next person might not be able to handle that, because you have to repetitively keep sharing your story. And as far as the substance go, if you can't qualify for health insurance, even through our state, then the cheapest thing to help you cope is a substance. So I can't get the proper help that I need, or I don't qualify for it, or I'm not recognized as a victim to get the assistance, then I just got to do what I got to do to make sure my mental state is okay, and that's turning to substances.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I'm going to say like 2 more sentences on that. It's very hard to find professionals that are even in your network that are able to help you, but it's also important for us to know like our boundaries. Like, I am not going to come out and say, oh, I know everything. I know how to help everyone. I got all the resources. No, I'm learning every single day. But I have had experiences with therapists that say, oh, I know how to help with this. Oh, I know how to do that. And it is a horrible experience for the survivors I'm working with, because they don't know. And so they took on more, and I try and give them credit. Like, I appreciate you trying, but at the same time, like, don't try on the survivor I'm working with. Don't do that to them, because then they'll hop, a few therapists, and you can only keep saying, no, give it another shot. It's exhausting. Like, it's not fair to them. So we definitely need more professionals in that capacity, but we also need to be realistic with, can you take this? Are you trained in this? Is it appropriate for you to take this case? That's a big problem I've run into as well.
It's a really important point, Allie. Yeah, so we kind of touched on, clearly not seeing a way out of your circumstances, not seeing that there are services and the support out there to get help would definitely be something that prevents someone from successfully exiting the sex trade. What are some other barriers that may keep someone from leaving the life? We also talked about substance addiction. They're so dependent on their trafficker to provide that substance. That could be another reason someone stays stuck in the life. What are some other barriers or reasons why people remain in the sex trade if they want to leave?
A barrier is they have children with their trafficker.
Mm-hmm.
They're afraid to leave trafficking because if they leave, their trafficker controls everything. If they leave, they're leaving with nothing, and there's not even a promise of where they're going to be able to go if they do leave. And then next thing, the way our system's set up is the next thing to do is to call Child Protective Services because now you can't care for your kids. So that's a barrier. Also, a barrier is your credit. Your credit could be destroyed. You have a felony. You don't have education. You don't have work experience. You don't have what a lot of everyday people have. So what are you going to do, especially if you do have kids with your trafficker? What are you going to do to care for yourself and your kids? Or what are you going to do how are you going to fix your credit? Or how are you going to get your record cleared so that way you can go get a job where you can sustain yourself and move on in your life? Those are barriers, along with substance issues and mental health issues. I have a mental health disorder, and where am I going to go to get help? It's the lack of knowledge and awareness on the processes of actually getting the help that you need. Absolutely.
And I think too, depending on each person, a billion different things could be barriers. What could be a barrier for one person and not for another. But I mean, you have to be realistic too. It's not, okay, you've made the decision, you want to leave the life, and then it's easy. Like, it takes so much time to get in the services, to find the right services, to build trust with the people that are supposed to be helping you. I mean, they're not going to trust you right out the gate, understandably so. It's a protective mechanism. And so all that takes time. And then everything is not going to go smooth, right? You have, okay, well, you found a therapist, never mind, they're not qualified to help you. Oh, we have your Medicaid, but that agency can't service you, oh, you have to pay for this. Like, not having identification, like, that's something we can help people replace, but it's not going to happen tomorrow. You're still stuck going through the already existing systems that are not meant for emergencies in the first place. They're already way too slow. Like, being on probation, parole. Like, if you do have a record, if your biggest fear is, okay, well, I've absconded, all I'm going to do is end up in jail. How is that going to help me? And so you have so many and it's not just a decision. I think a lot of people, that's like my biggest pet peeve is, well, why don't you just leave? Well, hold on a second. Like, what are they leaving to? Where are they going? How are they going to eat? How are they going to get there? Like, there's just so many things that I think people don't understand because they're not diving beneath the surface. It's like asking you to leave where you live right now, go outside and figure your life out. None of us would take that option. I mean, truthfully, we wouldn't. We'd be like, never mind, we don't want to leave our belongings, or, well, I know these people, and so I'm going to stick with them just because I'm used to it. It's terrifying. I mean, and you have professionals saying, trust me, I'm going to help you. But most likely it's not the first time they've had someone say that to them, and that person disappeared on them, or didn't follow up with them, or didn't keep their word. And so you're fighting against a lot of different struggles. And so when you're wondering, why are they difficult to work with? Why are they yelling about this? Well, take a step back and realize, like, they're doing it for a reason. They have their reasons for certain things, like for what they're doing, how they're acting. You just don't understand it, and you will understand it with time. But the last thing you want to do, is just tell them, okay, never mind, you'll figure it out. Because I get tested a lot. Brigette, I don't know if this happens to you too, but like, they'll be like, oh, well, we'll see if you'll keep your word. Or sure, you'll come get me.
No, it don't happen to me.
Really? It happens to, I will say, non-lived experience people, because they're like, sure, you're here to help me. We'll see about that.
Yeah, I definitely was. I'm glad you brought that up, because even when you think about it, some of the barriers that prevent people from leaving can be you.
Mm-hmm.
Just the fact that how do you know anything? Like, I don't know if, and even like our own perspective can prevent someone from even moving on to that next level, right? So I think you bring up a good point, Ellie, in that, we do get tested. It's like, let's see if you can go through the long haul here, with this. And so it's something definitely as a service provider that you've got to be aware of, and to be open yourself to,
Bridget, were you going to say something else?
Yeah, I would like to touch on the trusting too, because a lot of people always ask, like, why don't you guys trust people? It's hard to trust people when the same people that we're supposed to trust are the same ones that were buying us. It's hard to trust doctors. It's hard to trust attorneys. It's hard to trust CEOs. It's hard to trust people because those same people are the ones that buy us. And I hope that helps people have a better understanding. It's not that we don't want to trust. It's just our experiences with the people that buy us and the people that are exploiting us. That's what makes it hard for us to trust, because we know what people are doing, because it's been done to us.
Absolutely. That's such a good point.
Man, so even with a case manager, you can face a tremendous amount of barriers just to figuring out the system. You can imagine like how a survivor just leaving life would feel trying to navigate all of that on their own. Brigette, what's wrong with advocates or just people in general using the term rescuing? Oh, we rescued 3 women from this sex trafficking sting, or we were out doing street outreach and we rescued 5 people. What's wrong with that term, that phrase?
You're disempowering survivors. And like I stated a little while ago or earlier today, that I'll give credit to law enforcement that are going in, breaking down the doors, actually going in and rescuing people, guns drawn and everything else, right? I respect that. That's what they're doing. That's what their job is. But if you're doing a street outreach, or you're having an organization and people are coming to you for services, and then you turn around and say, oh, well, look, I saved this survivor. You didn't save them. You gave them a choice. You gave them a choice to leave, and they took the courageous step to step out of the life and move forward with what they want to do out of the life. When you disempower us, you're making us vulnerable again.
That's part of that recovery, is like being empowered, seeing how truly like courageous and resilient you are, the immense amount of strength that it does take to leave the life and make that choice. Like, you are the one doing all the work. Like, you are saving yourself for, yeah.
And I think the only thing I'll say about this is, like, a lot of people don't understand either. I think a lot of people know about minor trafficking more than anything, but like with adults, they are making every single decision they are doing. They're not mandated to go do this or go do that. And there's not really much follow-up for adults. So like, when adults go make those decisions, every step of the way, every day they decide to stay clean, every day they decide to stay in a program, all that is 100% their choice. They are choosing to go do that. And it's not easy. And I think they don't get the credit that they should, because no one's making them do it. They're deciding every day that that's what they want to do. And they're fighting every day against all those things that they were used to in the past, or the systems that are still not built to help them properly. They are making those decisions every second of every day.
They have to learn a whole new way of life. Absolutely. So what is the range of support that a survivor needs once they leave the life. We kind of touched on, mental health services is very important. Substance addiction, some kind of services there. What other kind of services? What is the extent, the range of services to help someone get back on their feet, leave the life?
The first thing that we need to do, we need to clean up our movement. And what I say by that is because I've been doing this work for almost 10 years now, and it's so disconjointed amongst organizations, anti-trafficking organizations. And I sit back sometimes and I look, I'm like, gosh, the human trafficking movement's as catty as the life is, because everybody's fighting for, the funding, or they're fighting for this, or they're fighting for that. And it needs to stop. If we're going to be an anti-human trafficking movement, we need to come together. We need to work together. We all need to come together and start combating this. Shared Hope International is an national organization that grades every state on how well they're combating human trafficking. We got an F. We failed. Michigan failed. And that's an embarrassment, because we have good advocates out here. We have survivor leaders out here. We need to come together and do better. And for services alone that's needed, it's complex and it's long term for a survivor to recover. So say your program's 6 months long, a lot of the systems are set up like, okay, you're here for 6 months. Okay, well, when you're done, bye, see you later. But that person still needs support, because it might take them 6 months just to recover their sleep and food, their eating habits, and everything else. We have very scarce resources here in Michigan. We don't have a home for LGBTQ. We don't have a home for boys. We don't have a home for men. We don't have a home for survivors with children.
Kids.
We don't have, we have a couple for kids, but can I tell you they're the greatest? No, I can't. I can't tell you that. We need to come together and start paving a better way for survivors to get the assistance that they need.
I agree with that 100%. I mean, our job essentially as like advocates and caseworkers is to navigate the system so the stress doesn't land on the person that needs the help, but we can't avoid it all the time. I mean, it blows my mind whenever I get very stressed. Like, why isn't this working? Why can't we do this? Why is there no resources? I feel the stress. And then I just think, well, could you imagine trying to do this by yourself? And I understand the systems, and it's like, and I'm still getting flustered. So, I mean, we need a lot more resources, like Brigette said. And I mean, we could name them off forever, because sure, everyone might start with the initial resources of, okay, you need safety, you need housing, you need a support system, but like what people's goals are different. So what one person might say, I want an independent job on my own. I want to be self-employed. Another person might say, I want to go back to school. Another person might just say, maybe I don't want to work, and they have the ability to, go volunteer at organizations. Like, it just depends on what their goals are. But we definitely, I mean, we do have some organizations, but I agree. It is very frustrating when we're all in the same fight, but at the same time, why aren't we working together? Like, I have great relationships. Like, Brigette literally helped me last week, I swear, with a case. So like, having people in the field that are like, yes, I'll help you. What do you need? That's great, but it's not everywhere. And that's super frustrating, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if, one survivor is getting services over here or at 12 other places. What matters is that they're getting the care that they need and deserve, versus, oh, I get the funding number or all that stuff. And I get it, because the state pits us against each other when we apply for grants. And I get that. But once the funding has like come down, we just need to work together, because we don't all do the same thing. I can't offer all the services in the world. I need other agencies to help. I need other people with their brains and their resources and all that. Like, we have to work together. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, what agency they're going through or anything like that. What matters is that they're getting the help that they want and that they need. And we're not here to decide who deserves it and who doesn't.
Yeah, totally agree.
Okay, awesome. Allie, could you tell us a little bit more? What kind of services does Common Ground provide? You mentioned you do a lot, but you don't do everything. What are some of the things that Common Ground does provide?
So our victim assistance program, like for trafficking specifically, I'll talk on that because that's the one that I work out of. We cover 8 counties in Southeast Michigan. So I will say that is super helpful that we, don't dictate, oh, you're in Oakland, you got to stay in Oakland for us to help you. That's not how it works. So we cover 8 counties. We are case managers. So normally we always help people, with housing right out the gate, mental health, if they have substance use, do they have a court case? Do they want to be involved with the justice system if they're the victim in a case versus do they have charges themselves? It's really common to work with people that have some sort of charge because, either their trafficker made them go steal food or buy drugs and they got caught, whatever it could be. We help them on that end too. So we look at how trafficking has impacted their life. And then thankfully we're able to kind of take those and go work with them in that capacity. So like we also offer transportation, which is helpful because that was a huge, huge barrier. Thankfully, COVID did not impact us doing that because there was no Uber or Lyft drivers in the beginning of the pandemic. So like we would just go and transport people, like getting them physical health is also a big thing too. I mean, it's pretty common in the cases that I've seen for people to not have gone to a doctor in years, whether they have, they need STD testing or not, they just haven't even gone to see if they're doing okay. So it's pretty complex, but I'm big on always saying like we work with people whether they want to work with the justice system or not. If they, happen to come in contact with law enforcement and that's how we get their information, they don't have to work with law enforcement for us to work with them. If they want nothing to do with law enforcement, that's fine. That doesn't mean you don't deserve help. So we help them essentially whatever their capacity is. And I know Brigette talked about a timeline. So one thing that I'm actually really proud of at Common Ground is that we're not time limited services. So it's not, okay, you need to figure out what you're going to do in 3 months and then we're pushing you out the door. Our cases are very different. Like I've had a case over 2 years now with someone versus, I've had a case in 3 months, maybe we achieved all their goals and they're done, but we don't end services on people because that's not how life works. I mean, we've also had people close a case after 6 months because they're doing good. And then a year later, they reach out and say, hey, I need help again. So we reopen their case. We don't dictate, when they need help and when they don't. And so I'd say that's a pretty good summary overall, but then you get into more, individual, what are their goals? What do they want to do? Do they want to go into a program or do they want independent living? We try and navigate the nightmares of the system because that's literally what it is. Housing is a mess, mental health, substance use, the justice system. I'm not trying to sound like everything is just going downhill, but I mean, if I could not do it alone, and I understand the system, like I couldn't even imagine going through one of the 1,000 things for the people that we try and help, and I'd probably give up. So that's saying a lot considering I actually understand most of the system. But again, I'm learning every day. Like the people I'm helping teach me stuff every day. And that's one of the best parts about like doing this is the people you work with are amazing. I mean, they're awesome, awesome people. They just haven't been able to even have the chance to show who they really are and get the opportunity to, talk about something that's not a survival mechanism. Like, oh, what do you actually enjoy doing? Getting their self-care skills back. Like there's awesome, awesome people that I've been lucky enough to even help. And so I went on a tangent, but I stand by what I said.
Stuff. And I would just say like Brigette mentioned at the beginning, systematic oppression. Like you could be, if you get tied up in the criminal justice system at an early age, now you got a felony on your record. It's not easy for you just to get a job. So that can be another reason why people are entering the sex trade, because they've been oppressed by the system. Hannah, we've got a couple questions in some participation on Facebook.
Yeah. So I'm going to do this. Okay. So we have Kathleen, who is a practicing mental health clinician, who's new to the field and has a strong interest in working with advocating for this population. So she is asking how you would suggest moving forward with client reassignment if if you discover that you're not a good match for a client. So while staying mindful to not leave the individual feeling abandoned, but being realistic about the limitations, limited availability of clinicians within the network.
I like that question, first of all, because you're even taking a second to realize, maybe I'm not qualified enough for this or trained enough in this. And I think that takes a lot, right? Because that's recognizing in yourself, I don't have this ability right now. I would definitely, honestly, I would be truthful with your client. I would let them know, I want to keep working with you. I want to offer you emotional support in my capacity, but how would you feel about trying to find someone who could help you more towards that, trauma, if that's what they're looking for? That way also you're giving them the decision, you're letting them know, like, I might not be qualified in this, but I'm still overall, a therapist, a clinician. I have training. So maybe there's certain things that you could work through with them. And if they wanted to find another therapist, then you could go that route. I don't know where you're located, but you could honestly call Common Ground and get connected with one of us. And we have a, unfortunately, very short list of therapists that I would actually send survivors to that I have met with that don't kind of throw up red flags, or I've had clients go to that they speak highly of. So I would kind of go that route would be my suggestion, but I appreciate that question because I feel like that takes a lot to recognize that maybe I'm not a good fit for this, but you're still putting your client first, right? How can I help my client best based on what they need? And I think that's a big deal.
And I'll respond to that as well. I'm a big advocate for transparency. You can talk to us like human beings. You're not going to trigger us because majority of us don't even self-identify. So if you're asking us questions, yeah, we'll be a little hesitant because we haven't built that rapport or that trust with you. And I also encourage soft transfers. So if you can't help that person, make the call for them, sit with them, and make the soft transfer. Don't give them a list of places and say, here, go call these places, because they can't do it. I couldn't do it in the very beginning. So I really encourage just being transparent, being yourself, because we read people. That's how we stay alive. We had to read people, their body language, their tones, the way they're looking at us and everything else. So be yourself. When you see me, I'm a professional, but you look at me and be like, why is she coming in here with ripped jeans on, Jordans, and a hoodie? Because the people that I work with relate to that. So when you're coming to a survivor and you're trying to figure out how you can talk to them and approach them, give them your first name. Mm-hmm. We don't need your title. We can see your title. We can see what you do, but leave that at the door. Be a human talking to another human being.
I really appreciate you saying that, Brigette, because Brigette, we both got our bachelor's degree in social work, and that's like heavily like taught in school, like in our education, is like, you have to be a professional. You have to have these professional boundaries. You have to, so I really appreciate you saying that, because it's okay to be yourself, because that's what they relate to. Absolutely.
It's also okay to say, actually, I don't know the answer to that. I'm glad you asked. Let's go look together. How can I help you, find the answers that we both need to find, or, it's okay to say that you don't know, or that, you have to look up some stuff too. And that maybe, you go do that kind of search together.
Definitely. And if you expect honesty eventually, once they trust you, you need to be honest with them right out the gate. Mm-hmm. Like I always tell people, like you said, Hannah, if I don't know something, I don't know, but let me see what I can figure out, or let me look into it. I'm not going to, tell you one thing and then you're like, well, that is nothing like what you just said to me. And I think like I was at a conference talking to medical professionals, and so I'm sure they didn't love this, but it's off what Brigette says. Like, we worked hard for education, our titles, our degrees, all that type of stuff. But at the end of the day, you're talking to another person. You know how it feels like when someone talks down to you, or assumes they know everything about you, or, well, I have this degree in this and I know this. No, you don't know anything. Like, you have it, keep it in your head, but you don't need to come out and say, well, I've done this for, 5 years. And at the end of the day, does that really matter? No. So take a step back and I always say, just start with listening and see what they want to share with you and then go from there. Cause a lot of times they get told, you need to do this, you should do that. Why don't you do that? And instead of why don't you just take a second and figure out what they want to share with you?
You ladies are so awesome. So, Brigette and Allie, do you guys want to tell us about some of the other amazing things that you guys do? Tasks force, special initiatives. What are some of the other programs that you guys participate in or are a part of?
Okay, I'll start briefly. So I'd say probably in August of last year, something I actually am really proud of. Now, again, we have a lot more work to do and we need to start actually doing things. I'm very much a doer. I don't want to sit in a meeting and just talk and then meet again a month later and we talk about the same things. But we started a task force back in August called Motive. And so right now it's only with Madison Heights Police. And I've worked with a lot of police departments, but I have never worked with officers actually in their undercover unit that are as understanding and actually empathetic about what goes on. And so we started a collaboration where if they go do an actual raid, once they go in and they see if the person is safe, then I go in and I actually talk with the victim first. So I always tell them I'm not law enforcement. So if you tell me stuff and you don't want anything to do with them, that stays between us. And we've done a few, of course, before funding, and then we got disbanded and we're coming back together. So, but that overall so far has worked really well, because you need to come from okay, are you actually here to help me? Or are you actually here because you just want this case or you just want to get the trafficker, but you don't actually care about what the victim needs or what the survivor needs. So that has been super exciting. I want to get back to it. I'm very much throw me in, boots on the ground. I don't care. I'd rather be there than behind a desk. So that's one thing that's hopefully coming back soon. And then the Oakland County Human Trafficking Task Force is working on the paperwork. And of course, because it's a government thing now, it's going very slow. But they adopted this idea. I called it Survivor to Thriver. So I noticed a lot of the people that I work with long-term, sure, we can get them medical insurance and maybe housing through the state and food assistance, stuff like that. But there's no funding out there to get them from survival mode to things they actually enjoy. Maybe they're a big reader. Maybe they like to write or draw, or maybe they want to get into fitness. So that program's not live yet. And I keep bugging people about it because now it's out of my hands, but soon they're going to start a pilot program where a case manager or an advocate can submit a sheet of paper saying, not any identifying information on the victim survivor to keep them safe, but just, hey, I've been working with someone, they're huge into reading and they don't have, books are expensive. So they want to be able to, make the choices, get them a gift card, they go to the store, they buy what books they like. Or, I have someone who's a really avid painter. And so, but there's a billion different types of paint out there. So instead of being like, hey, here's the hand-me-down paints I could find you, you're empowering them with, here's a gift card, go get what you like. And so that was started last year too, and it's still not up and running, but they're moving slowly in my mind. But I'm excited for when that does happen, because I'm sure Brigette does all the time too, but a lot of service workers in this field, we'll just go buy it ourselves. I'm not here to tell you, oh, you can't do what you enjoy because I don't have the funding for it. Most of the time, which probably shouldn't say, I'm just going to go get it. I'm going to go give it to you. If I can do anything to make you happier or to make you actually have self-care, I'm going to do everything I can in my power to reduce your stress. So this will hopefully help in the long term. The task force is actually going to fund it. So that's super awesome. They could apply to, get tickets to go to the zoo or to the movies. I have clients with kids, they've never been to the zoo. When they were younger, their kids have never been to the zoo. So experiences that we take for granted, oh, we'll just go do this or we'll just go grab dinner. But things that are normal to us that they haven't been able to actually enjoy. And so I'm excited about that one once it gets up and running, but I'm just glad that they actually like took the idea and are actually taking steps towards making it a real thing. So that will be exciting. And Brigette, you'll be able to apply for it too. So woohoo! It'll be for like caseworkers or advocates. Whoever works with HT survivors can apply like on behalf of the survivor. So
Cool. Awesome.
but that's my spiel.
Let's see here. I got a lot of stuff going on. I am a board member, and this is my third term on the Michigan Human Trafficking Health Advisory Board. They don't want me to go. So I've been on this board since like 2015. And we had worked with a hospital chain in creating a pilot program for identifying victims of trafficking in the hospitals. Right now, we're still working on that, but we're also getting ready to start looking into working with a couple people that will help us, because the problem is there's no oversight over human trafficking programs in our state. They're just popping up and there's no oversight. And me being one of the leading advocates in our state, I hear the complaints from survivors. They come to me about the complaints. And so now what we're looking to do is create a way to, what's the word I'm looking for? Track and see from the survivor perspective how these programs are operating and helping them, more or less. So we're putting that on our agenda, and I can send you guys all, meeting invites for our board meetings. And I'm also, HEAT is in the works, and what HEAT is the Human Exploitation Advisory Team, which is survivor-led. Solely survivor-led, to where we'll be going out and doing our trainings and stuff like that for our communities. And I'm also, like I said, getting ready to launch Brigette, Henderson and Associates, which is a platform for survivors to feel comfortable when they're ready to share their stories. Because what we have been seeing is survivors get into these programs and they're not even through the whole program. They might have just gotten freshly out of the life, and 2 months later, organizations are having them sharing their stories at their events. That's re-exploitation. So that's why I've decided, and I'm working with a few other survivors, and we will be providing trainings and consultations and all of that good stuff to organizations to better improve their programs. I give the organizations 100% credit for even trying. But if you get to that point to where you're confused or you don't know what to do or what should you add or whatever, come and talk to us. But don't put a survivor that's freshly out of the life on the spot to help you assist those type of needs that your organization may have. So that's why we're about to go ahead and launch this, hopefully here within the next couple weeks.
That is all very much needed. That's awesome.
Thank you, ladies. I'll just, to wrap things up today, we got one final question for you. So if you had a magic wand, what is one thing, if you can narrow it down to one thing, one thing you would change or that needs to change in society in order to put an end to sex trafficking? What is something you wish would happen, you'd like to see, or you think that needs to happen?
I would say mine's way more broad, but I would probably say like our understanding and our judgment. I think it's very easy for people to just say, oh, I don't know anyone that's happened to, or I don't know anyone that could be vulnerable to that, or that's not my problem. Like, we don't understand. I think we need to come back to like, okay, we're all human, we're all people. Why aren't we caring about everyone equally? Like, I don't know. That's my biggest thing. I think there's just a lot of misunderstanding out there, and like, we judge people. Oh, well, they're just a drug addict. Oh, well, they have mental health issues. Like, why we need to look under the surface and figure out why all those things started in the first place, and really, really care about like what you're doing. Now, whether you're in trafficking or not, care about the field you're in, because that makes such a difference. And the people that you're trying to help can read right through you if you don't actually want to be there or don't really care about helping them. And so I'm a big, like, do what you're passionate about person over the money. But I would definitely say, like, love what you do and actually care about helping the people, because that's what matters at the end of the day.
And mine is my magic wand. If I had it, it would be for us to stop normalizing the exploitation of people. Our society, it's everywhere. It's in our music, it's on our TV, it's in our movies, it's in cartoons, it's wherever you turn around. And that would be my thing, is to stop normalizing the exploitation of people.
I love that. That's
Mhm.
awesome, you guys. Sorry, Emily, did I cut you off?
I was just saying amen.
Amen to that. Well, you guys it looks like our time is up, and we could just continue the conversation forever, but we're just so thankful that you guys joined us for a Cup of Hope. And thank you so much, Brigette and Allie, for sharing and for really pouring your hearts into the work that you both do. We're just so grateful and encouraged by both of you. So to all of our listeners, thank you for being here, and share a cup of hope today if you're able to. Thank you so much, you guys.
Thank you.
Ladies.
Thank you.